July 2011. The Insane Secret. My Husband Hid and the Letter That Changed Everything, July 2011. That's when my entire world collapsed and rebuilt itself in the space of reading a single letter. A letter I found hidden beneath my husband's winter coats. A letter that wasn't meant for me. A letter that revealed a secret so insane, so completely unexpected, that it destroyed everything I thought I knew about the man I'd been married to for 7 years. If you've ever discovered something that made you question your entire reality, then you need to hear this story, because what I discovered that summer changed everything. Before I take you back to that moment, you need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because I share real, jaw-dropping stories like this every single week. Stories about secrets that change lives, discoveries that shatter relationships, truths people hide for years. This July 2011 story is one of the most insane I've ever experienced. So subscribe now and smash that like button right this second, because it helps this story reach others who need to hear it. Drop a comment right now telling me if you've ever found something that changed everything. I read every single comment. My name is Catherine. I'm 41 years old now, but in July 2011 I was 31, and I thought I had my life figured out. I'd been married to my husband Michael for 7 years. We'd met in our early 20s, dated for 3 years before getting married, built what I thought was a solid, honest, transparent relationship. Michael was a high school guidance counselor. I was working as a paralegal. We had a house in the suburbs. We're talking about starting a family. Everything was normal. Everything was stable. Everything was exactly what you'd expect. July 2011 was brutally hot. One of those summers where the air conditioning runs constantly and you avoid going outside. Michael and I had been planning a vacation, a week at a lake cabin we'd rented. We were supposed to leave July 15th. I was packing, reorganizing our bedroom closet, which had become cluttered. Michael's winter coats were taking up space, so I started pulling them down to store in the basement until fall. And if you're already hooked, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what year changed your life forever. As I pulled down Michael's heavy wool coat, this thick coat he'd had since before we met, something fell out from beneath it. An envelope, wrinkled, yellowed with age, sealed and then resealed with clear tape like someone had opened it and wanted to close it again. My first thought was it was just old mail, but then I looked closer. The postmark said April 1998. 13 years earlier, 5 years before Michael and I had even met. The envelope was addressed to Michael at an address I didn't recognize, and the return address was from someone named Sarah Blackwood, a name I'd never heard, a name Michael had never mentioned in 7 years of marriage. I stood there trying to figure out what it was. Why would Michael keep a letter from 1998? Why hide it beneath his winter coats? Why had it been opened and resealed? I should have put it back. Should have respected Michael's privacy. But something about finding it hidden made me suspicious. Something in my gut told me this letter mattered. So I did something I'd never done before in 7 years of marriage. I violated Michael's privacy. I opened the letter. The paper inside was old, the ink slightly faded but readable. The handwriting was feminine, careful. And as I started reading, my heartbeat shifted from curiosity to confusion to fear to something so profound I had to sit down on the floor because my legs wouldn't hold me. Subscribe right now if you want to know what that letter said, because nothing could have prepared me for this. The letter started simply. Dear Michael, I'm writing this knowing you'll probably never read it, but there are things you deserve to know. Things I should have told you long ago, but was too afraid to say. I kept reading, my hands shaking. You knew me as David. You knew me as your college roommate, your best friend, the person you lived with for 3 years. But David wasn't the whole truth. David was who I had to be because I was too scared to be who I actually am. My mind raced. Michael had mentioned David before, his college roommate, someone he'd been close with but lost touch with after graduation. But the return address said Sarah, not David. My name is Sarah. It always was, even when I was presenting as David. I'm a transgender woman, Michael. The person you knew in college was me hiding, me pretending, me so deep in denial about my gender identity that I was making myself sick trying to maintain a masculine presentation I never felt comfortable with. I stopped breathing. Michael's college roommate David was transgender, had transitioned, was now Sarah, and Michael had never mentioned this. In 7 years of marriage, he'd never said a word. Why would he hide that? But the letter wasn't done. I need to tell you why I really left, why I cut contact so completely. It wasn't just about my transition. It was about feelings I had that I couldn't act on. Michael, I was in love with you. For all 3 years we lived together, I was in love with you in ways I couldn't acknowledge because I was presenting as male and you're straight and nothing could have happened. The world tilted. My husband's former roommate had been in love with him, but I kept reading. But the real reason I'm writing now is about that night. March 1998, the night before I left. I know you were drunk, but we kissed, Michael. You initiated it, said you'd been feeling confused, said you thought you might have feelings for David too. I dropped the letter. My husband had kissed David, had kissed someone he thought was male, had apparently expressed feelings suggesting he wasn't entirely straight, and he'd never told me. If this is shocking you, hit that like button and leave a comment saying July 2011, so I know you're still with me. I picked the letter back up, hands shaking. I left the next morning without saying goodbye because I panicked. Because you'd kissed me thinking I was male, and I knew I needed to tell you I was trans, but I was too afraid you'd feel betrayed. So I ran, changed my number, moved across the country, started my transition away from everyone who'd known me before. The letter continued. I'm writing now because I'm finally at peace with who I am. I've been living as Sarah for 10 years. I'm happy. And I wanted you to know the truth. Wanted to apologize for leaving without explanation. Wanted to tell you that kiss was real and meaningful even though circumstances were complicated. Then came the part that made me gasp. I hope you've found happiness, Michael. And I hope you figured out your own identity and sexuality. Because that night, you told me you thought you might be bisexual, that you'd been attracted to both men and women but had never acted on attraction to men because of fear and social pressure. I hope you found the courage to be authentic. The letter ended with Sarah's contact information and an invitation to reach out. It was dated April 1998. Michael had received this 13 years ago, 6 years before he'd even met me, and he'd never mentioned it. Never told me about David, Sarah. Never disclosed he'd kissed someone he thought was male. Never mentioned he'd told someone he might be bisexual. I sat on the floor, and my entire understanding of my marriage crumbled. The man I thought I'd married, straight, uncomplicated, conventional, had a whole history I knew nothing about, had questioned his sexuality in college, had feelings for someone he thought was male, had hidden this entire part of his past for 7 years. Subscribe right now because what happened when I confronted Michael is crucial. I don't know how long I sat there. Time felt suspended. I was trying to process too much. Was Michael closeted? Was he bisexual and never felt safe telling me? Had he married me while secretly desiring men? Was our relationship built on suppression? Every moment of our 7 years suddenly felt suspect. Every time he'd said he loved me, was it real? Or was he forcing himself into a heterosexual life? I heard the front door. Michael was home from work. I heard his keys hit the counter, heard him call, "Catherine, I'm home," in that normal voice that suddenly sounded like a stranger's. I was still on the floor holding the letter. I should have hidden it, should have processed before confronting him, but I couldn't move. Michael appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing on the floor?" Then he saw the letter, saw the envelope, and color drained from his face. Actual physical draining until he was pale as paper. "Where did you find that?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "In the closet," I said flatly. "Hidden under your coat. Who is Sarah Blackwood, Michael? And why have you been hiding this for 13 years? Michael looked sick. He sat on the bed, put his head in his hands. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. "I can explain," he said. "It's not what you think. I mean, it is, but it's complicated." "Then explain," I said, anger breaking through shock. "Explain why your college roommate who was in love with you and who you kissed has been a secret our entire marriage. Explain why you never told me David transitioned. Explain why you told someone you might be bisexual but never mentioned that to your wife. Explain all of it, because right now I feel like I don't know you at all. If you think you deserve complete honesty from your partner, hit that like button right now." Michael took a deep breath. "Everything in that letter is true. I did live with David. We were best friends. Yes, David transitioned to Sarah after we lost touch. I didn't know until I got that letter in 1998. And yes, we did kiss. One time, one night when we were both drunk. And yes, I did tell David I thought I might be bisexual. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, voice breaking. We've been married 7 years. How could you hide something this fundamental? It wasn't about you, Michael said. It was about me, about my internalized homophobia, about fear of being anything other than straight because of how I was raised. My parents, my religious background, my small conservative town, all of it taught me being anything other than heterosexual was wrong. When I had these feelings in college, when I kissed David, I panicked. When David disappeared without explanation, I told myself it had never happened, that the kiss was just drunken experimentation, that my attraction wasn't real. I shoved it down, buried it. When I got Sarah's letter explaining everything, I panicked again, read it and immediately sealed it back up and hid it because I couldn't deal with what it represented. What did it represent? I asked. That I wasn't who I'd been pretending to be my entire life, Michael said, tears streaming. That my straight masculine identity was partially performance. That I had attractions that didn't fit the narrow box I'd put myself in. That admitting it would mean losing my family's acceptance, my church community, everything I'd built my identity around. So you buried it, I said. You hid this letter for 13 years. You married me and never gave me the chance to love who you actually are instead of who you were pretending to be. I wasn't pretending with you, Michael insisted. My feelings for you are real. My love is real. Being with you isn't a lie. I'm genuinely attracted to you. The fact that I'm also attracted to men doesn't make my attraction to you less real. But you hid it, I said. For 7 years. You let me marry you thinking you were straight. Don't you see how that's dishonest? I know, Michael said. I should have told you. Should have been honest before we got married. But I was terrified you'd see me differently. That you wouldn't want to be with someone bisexual. Hit that subscribe button right now because what I said next shocked both of us. You're right, I said slowly. I would have seen you differently, but not how you think. I would have seen you as braver, as more honest. Michael, I don't care that you're bisexual. I care that you hid it. I care that you didn't trust me. I care that finding out this way makes me question what else you're hiding. Michael looked stunned. You don't care that I'm bisexual? Of course not, I said. Being bisexual doesn't change that you love me. But lying about it, hiding this for 13 years, that changes things. That makes me feel like I don't really know you. That makes me question if you've been living authentically. I don't want to be with men, Michael said quickly. I'm not leaving you. Being bisexual doesn't mean I need to act on attraction to men. It means I'm capable of being attracted to men and women. And I chose you. I choose you every day. But you're not choosing me honestly, I said. You're choosing me while hiding major parts of yourself. That's not real choice. That's suppression. And eventually, suppressed things break through. We sat in silence. Finally, Michael spoke. I want to be honest. I want to live authentically. But I don't know how after 31 years of suppressing this. Therapy, I said. We need therapy. Both individual and couples. You need to figure out who you are when you're not hiding. I need to process this. And we need to figure out if our marriage can survive. Do you want to stay married? Michael asked, fear clear. Leave a comment right now telling me what you would have done. Would you stay? Would you leave? And here's where I need complete honesty. In that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to stay married. I loved Michael, but I felt betrayed. Felt like 7 years had been built on partial truth. And I didn't know if I could rebuild trust. I don't know, I answered. I need time to process. I need space to figure out how I feel. We decided I'd stay with my sister for a few days while we processed. Before I left, I asked one more question. Did you ever contact Sarah? Ever respond to that letter? He shook his head. I was too scared. I kept it because part of me knew I should respond, but I never did. You should, I said. Whatever happens with us, you owe Sarah closure. She was brave enough to tell you the truth. You should acknowledge it. I went to my sister's house, spent 3 days crying and processing. My sister thought I should leave Michael, said the deception was unforgivable, but I couldn't decide quickly, because despite everything, I still loved him, and I understood why he'd hidden his sexuality. the fear and shame from growing up in environments that treat anything other than heterosexuality as wrong. But I knew our marriage couldn't continue as it had been. We needed fundamental changes, complete honesty. Michael needed to figure out who he was when not suppressing himself, and I needed to figure out if I could forgive the deception. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because what happened next transformed everything. When I returned home, Michael told me he'd contacted Sarah, had written her apologizing for not responding 13 years earlier. Sarah had responded warmly. They'd started a correspondence. Not romantic. Sarah was happily married to a woman, but as friends reconnecting and giving closure. Michael had also made an appointment with a therapist specializing in sexuality and identity issues. Started unpacking decades of internalized homophobia, and he asked if I'd go to couples therapy with him. I agreed. Not because I'd decided to stay, but because I needed structured space to process my feelings. Therapy was hard. There were sessions where I was angry, where I felt betrayed, where I didn't know if I could forgive. There were sessions where Michael broke down explaining the fear he'd lived with, the exhaustion of suppressing himself. There were sessions where we both cried and weren't sure we'd survive, but slowly, over months, we started rebuilding, started learning complete honesty, started figuring out what our marriage looked like built on truth. Michael came out to his family as bisexual, lost some family members who couldn't accept it, but gained freedom from hiding. He came out to close friends, started attending a support group for bisexual men, started living openly in ways he never had before. And our marriage changed, became more honest, more intimate, more real than it had been in 7 years when Michael was hiding, because he wasn't spending energy on suppression anymore. He could just be himself, complete, authentic, and I got to really know my husband for the first time. I had to work through my own feelings about being married to a bisexual man, had to confront insecurities about whether Michael might leave me for a man, whether I was enough. Therapy helped me understand that bisexuality doesn't work that way, that Michael's capacity for attraction to multiple genders didn't diminish his attraction to me or commitment to our marriage. It's been over a decade since July 2011, since I found that letter, since my world collapsed and rebuilt. And I want complete honesty. It wasn't easy. There were times I questioned whether staying was right. Times Michael questioned whether he could build an authentic life in a monogamous marriage to a woman. Times we both wondered if we were forcing something that didn't work. But we made it work. Found a version of marriage that's honest and authentic for both of us. Michael lives openly as bisexual now, though he's in a committed monogamous relationship with me. He's maintained his friendship with Sarah. He's built community with other bisexual people. He's no longer hiding major parts of himself, and our marriage is stronger for it. Not despite the July 2011 revelation, but because of it. Because forced honesty, even when painful, creates possibility for real intimacy. If this story moved you, if it made you think about honesty and secrets, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts. Would you have stayed? Would you have left? Your engagement helps this story reach people who need to hear it. And here's what I want you to take away from this July 2011 story. Secrets have weight. Things we hide don't disappear. They sit buried, taking up energy, requiring constant vigilance to keep suppressed. And eventually, they surface. Sometimes through found letters, sometimes through other revelations, but suppressed truths always surface. And when they do, they either destroy relationships or transform them. July 2011 could have been the end of my marriage. That letter could have destroyed everything Michael and I had built. But instead, it became the beginning of something more real, more honest, more authentic than what we'd had before. Because we made the choice to rebuild, to use Michael's forced coming out as an opportunity for complete honesty, to create a marriage based on truth rather than partial disclosure. Not everyone makes that choice. Not every marriage survives that kind of revelation. And that's okay. There's no right answer when you discover your partner has been hiding major parts of themselves. Some people stay and rebuild. Some people leave and start over. Both choices are valid depending on what you need, what you can forgive, what your relationship can become. But hiding isn't sustainable. Living in fear of discovery isn't sustainable. Suppressing major parts of yourself isn't sustainable. Eventually, the weight becomes too heavy. Eventually, something breaks. Eventually, the truth surfaces. Michael hid his bisexuality for 31 years, and it cost him. Cost him authenticity, years of living honestly, friendships, the freedom to be completely himself. And when it came out through a letter I found in a closet, he had to face everything he'd been running from. Share this video with someone who needs this message. Someone hiding major parts of themselves. Someone who's discovered a partner's secret. Someone who needs to understand that honesty, even when terrifying, is the foundation of real connection. July 2011 changed my life. That letter rewrote my understanding of my marriage, my husband, our history. And a decade later, I'm grateful for it. Grateful for the forced honesty. Grateful for the opportunity to know and love the real Michael, rather than the edited version. Grateful that our marriage became authentic rather than remaining a partial truth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this entire story. If you made it this far, drop a comment saying July 2011 so I know you stayed to the end. Hit that like button one final time. Subscribe if you haven't. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs it. And remember, the secrets we keep eventually surface. The parts of ourselves we hide eventually demand acknowledgement. And when that happens, we get to choose whether it destroys us or transforms us. Michael and I chose transformation, chose honesty, chose rebuilding on complete truth, and our marriage is better for it. July 2011 destroyed the marriage we had, but it created the possibility for the marriage we have now, and that's worth celebrating. The end.